How much does Haruki Murakami write every day? But more importantly, what mentality should you and I bring to our writing every single day? And today we are going to hear Murakami talk at length on both of these things. And if you guys don't already know, my name is Ian, and Right Conscious is the headquarters of everything related to Murakami here on YouTube. In the playlist down below, you will find an ever blossoming library of videos on Murakami that grows every single week. And when I make videos like this, someone always says in the comments, do what you want to do. Why are we looking to other people as role models? Art is 100% independent. And I love how we think we are the exception. In every other field, whether it's athletes, entrepreneurs, leaders, religious figures, whoever, they did not just have mentors and people that they modeled. Almost the entirety of their success was from standing on the shoulders of the people that came before them. And the same is true in literature. I've been to the David Foster Wallace archive and the Cormac McCarthy archive and read their journals, their early drafts of their novels. And the amount of outright stealing that they do would blow your mind. The amount of inspiration they get from various sources is insane. And I've talked to countless other people who have studied in different other archives, and they all say the exact same thing. But there's a difference between liking Tim O'Brien's use of phallic in his novel Going After Cacciato and stealing that word and its general usage like Cormac McCarthy did in Blood Meridian, and then completely modeling how much someone writes or their writing routine. But we need more help than ever, everybody, to put time into writing. There are more distractions, addictions, problems, drama, whatever than ever for you and I. And we need to be able to wake up and find some form of system to look to strive for, or we're just going to end up in the abyss and do nothing. Maybe once we have that, we can find out what works. But I would say 9 out of 10 of the people listening to this right now are not happy with their production as a writer, or they're not happy with how their writing is being received in the world, which is most of the time a skill issue, which means you actually need to find more time to get better. Because let's say we have a group of wide receivers on an NFL football team, and they are all doing the same exact workouts. They all have the same wide receiver coach, but then why don't all of them play the same? They're all training and doing the exact same practices, but they all have these unique characteristics as wide receivers. And that's the same thing with writing. We need to implement the strongest system, the strongest training, the strongest coaching, and then, of course, our imagination and everything else will take over. And that's where our unique stories and stuff will burst from us. And so I'll get to more of this in a second, but we're here for Murakami's thoughts. So let us now hear from him. When writing a novel, my rule is to produce roughly 10 Japanese manuscript pages, the equivalent of 1,600 English words every day. This works out to about 2.5 pages on my computer, but I base my calculations on the old system out of habit. On days where I want to write more, I still stop after 10 pages. When I don't feel like writing, I force myself to somehow fulfill my quota. Why do I do it this way? Because it is especially important to maintain a steady pace when tackling a big project. That can't work if you write a lot one day and nothing at all the next. So I punch in, write my 10 pages, then punch out, as if I'm working on a time card. That's not how an artist should go about his art, some may say. It sounds more like working in a factory, and I concur. That's not how artists work. But why must a novelist be an artist? Who made that rule? No one, right? So why not write in whatever way is most natural to you? Moreover, refusing to think of oneself as an artist removes a lot of pressure. More than being artists, novelists should think of themselves as free. Free meaning that we are able to do whatever we like, when we like, in a way we like without worrying about how the world sees us. This is far better than wearing the stiff and formal robes of the artist. Isaac Dinesen once said, I write a little every day, without hope and without despair. I write my 10 pages the same way, cool and detached. Without hope and without despair, says it perfectly. I wake early each morning, brew a fresh pot of coffee, work 4 or 5 hours straight. 10 pages means 300 pages a month. That works out to 1,800 pages in 6 months. And so there is a ton to go over there. But what is interesting about this number is that I've heard from almost everybody that, and obviously there are outliers, but I will just say that if you want to be a fiction writer in 2024, you most likely need to be writing more than 1,000 words a day. And if you are super slow, then I get it, I guess, but then maybe you just need more time to get that done. And that advice is not just coming from Murakami, but I can think of 10 to 15 other authors in my head right now that advocate for something over 1,000 words per day. And it just makes sense. It doesn't mean that you're going to use all of that, and you shouldn't. And that doesn't mean in your revision stage that you're going to be writing 1,000 words a day. But that is practice, because if you write 1,000 words a day, you can overwrite. If it's going to be a 100,000 word novel, you could write 170,000 words and cut some of it out. But some of that fluff, was practice, was time for imagination. And if there's a consistent 1,000 words per day, then there is a consistent unconscious and conscious progress on this piece of work that you are doing. And that's the most important thing. Like I just said, sometimes I've written something and it means nothing. It's going to get cut, but it was a personal exploration for me to help get me closer to other things that were going to be revealed, or just kind of the mood and tone of the novel that I didn't realize before. I could have sat there and as I was writing the scene, been like, well, this seems useless. I'm just going to call it for the day or move on to something else. But no, continue moving forward, continue training. And once again, Murakami is a genius here when he says that we need to abandon this label of the artist, because like I said, when you look at other professions who aren't necessarily held down by these idealistic and odd behaviors that artists have and hold themselves to, this persona, then it's like, oh wait, most athletes, most leaders, most entrepreneurs, most of these people dedicate every single day of their life and do something every single day for the betterment of that cause. But artists seem to think that they are better than that. And some are. And I've talked about this countless times before, that there is sometimes an art of doing nothing. But most of the time, from what I've seen, that really only exists in poetry, because there is kind of this level of attainment and skill acquisition when it comes to fiction and even nonfiction writing, if you're trying to reach the upper echelons, that requires a moderate amount of effort every single day for a couple decades. And obviously, anyone can write a novel. People are like, well, I don't need to do that. Yeah, millions of jackasses have written shitty novels. There's millions of them. But how seriously are you taking this? How deep? How do you think you'll find success? Like, I know people all the time, and they say that they're starting some new online business or doing something with the hopes of being done with working. They want to retire by 35 or 40 and be done. I'm like, dude, the universe, from what I can tell, doesn't really grant you that, because you're just giving up. You know, there are exceptions to the rule, but that means nothing. Just giving up on life and not creating, what a weird way to live. And that doesn't feel very motivating for me. If you find something that you want to do, you want to do it for decades to come. And the same is true with novelists. If you don't want to show up every single day and do this and write 1,600 words, then let's just be honest. You are probably doing this because you are aimless and have no other skill in life, and you think you're good at writing, and maybe you are, and it just seems like the best possible outcome. But like when it comes to actually doing it and showing up every day, then you may actually not be all about it. And that's not a bad thing. That doesn't make you a worse person. That's just the truth. And as writers, we have a higher bar to clear than someone trying to win the 1,500 meters in the Olympics, because we're competing with everybody in the past. And writing is a game that doesn't stop when you're 30 and the EPO doesn't work anymore. It lasts into your 80s sometimes. And the bar has been being set higher and higher since Homer. And also, removing the label as an artist does remove a lot of pressure too, because the novel is a unique art form. I still think it's the most complicated place and most, I don't want to say intellectual. It still has, I don't know if anything will ever surpass it necessarily, where you have the freedom, like over the course of 150,000 words, if not more, you have so much creative freedom, because you can do interiority and see in people's minds and go everywhere. And you're the sole director. You know, at a movie, there's actors and there's producers and there's all this other stuff. And then like in independent films, there's like you guys know, those have problems too. But as a novelist, you can sit and create and have more freedom as an artist or as an explorer of life or consciousness than really any other thing in the world. You know, as an visual artist, you are limited to a canvas, just to this one little thing. Its length isn't very deep. You could, I guess, create a series of paintings. And when you look at a lot of artists, a lot of the successful authors that we talk about on this channel, they are actually very open-minded human beings. And this is why most of the time, religious writers, no offense to my 62% of people out there who identify with a religion in America, most of the time, that's why they aren't as necessarily successful. There are some exceptions. But when I look back at my shelf back there of people who are the best writers, and yes, I understand that people before 1900, it's crazy, were Christian because, oh wait, they were forced to be. Oh my God, wild stuff here. But let's say in the last 75 years, when I look back at the shelf, of the kind of the top authors, it's not this, that 62% is not represented. And that's because there has to be a certain freedom. There has to be a rebellion and a growth oriented mindset to be able to kind of function in this massive space of freedom, because you have to do it without shame, without labels, without worrying what other people are going to think of you. And there's ways to overcome that. Like, I'm not sitting here being like, oh, if you're religious, you can't write good stuff. You totally can. One of my favorite novelists of all time, I think probably the greatest Christian novelist of all time, Wendell Berry, who's still currently living, which maybe makes him maybe the greatest living novelist. He decided to connect with nature. He really went deep into nature and the environment, and like that kind of gave him this like thing to explore and like go really deep into. He like found this alternative path that wasn't violence, sex, drugs, paganism, city life, like stuff like that. He found an alternative path, and like that was very smart of him and like really successful. And for all my Murakami fans out there, I think that we can create a literary renaissance. And right now I'm going to tell you guys 3 different things I'm offering to kind of kickstart that process for you. 2 of them are free and 1 of them is paid. The first free one being, if you go to the description below and look at some of the links, there is a free Google Doc that details all of Haruki Murakami's favorite books and favorite authors. This is the most comprehensive document you can get anywhere online or in the world on Murakami's interests. And this should help, first of all, increase your reading list, help you get reading more, and kind of get the vibe of Murakami's inspirations. I've read a lot of the books on that list, but there are some like kind of unknown Japanese authors and books, at least to me, that I've discovered from that list that have turned out to be really good so far. The second thing I'm offering, which is a paid club, is I have a Haruki Murakami book club where we are currently reading 1Q84. But if you are seeing this sometime in the future, we will be consistently reading Murakami books for years to come, even doing rereads of them. And there is a new Murakami novel coming out in November. We've already read Novelist as a Vocation, and all the book club calls are recorded. And so you can go back and watch all of those. You will also get access over on the Right Conscious Substack to the Right Conscious Book Club, which reads more than 6 books at once. So Murakami is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of our book club calls. You will also get daily office hours where you can talk to me about really anything every single day and hang out with some cool people who are into literature and philosophy. I also post podcasts over on the Substack. I'm trying to get it up to the daily level, but it's been turning out to be more of like 4 or 5 a week, where I talk about kind of unique things that I don't think YouTube would allow or would really hit very well because they are very either meta, controversial, or just topics that I only want people on the Substack to have. And so there's more that I could tell you guys about on the Substack, but let me tell you guys about my last free offering, which I think a ton of you guys should be interested in if you are a writer. So I've had this vision of creating the greatest free writing community ever. Of all the writing tubers, the booktubers, I want to go bigger because some of them have Discords, and Discord is just overall a shitty platform. Reddit absolutely sucks. The medium is the message, and it corrupts any form of growth, and it really lacks in features. It isn't supposed to be a place where you can grow as a community. And so very soon, in the month of August, guaranteed, I am going to launch a free community that will feature writing challenges where you can share your work, free courses like you see right now where you can build your reading audience, get better at prose writing, poetry writing, how to learn to get out of writer's block, and as you can see, a meditation for authors course, creative flow accelerator. Right now, we are nearing 1,000 people on our waiting list. So I feel like it's going to be a big push. And my goal is, once again, to have the best writing community out there that's free, moderated, and it also is going to include a bunch of free courses too. And so if you want, you can go and join the wait list right now, or just wait another week until it launches. Doesn't matter to me. If you're seeing this in the future, we're already popping off. And so enough pitching for me. Let us get back to the video. So if you wrote 1,600 words per day for 3 months, you would have 144,000 words. And that would be enough. Let's assume 44,000 of those words can be cut, and it probably should get cut. Then you have a 100,000 word novel. And so around that point, you've probably put in, if you're following Murakami's advice of putting in, about 4 or 5 hours a day, you have around 500 hours of time put into your novel. So Murakami finishes a first draft in 3 months, but then why does he revise for the same amount of time for 3 more years? And so if you do the math, and I'll put it on the screen for you. So let's say Murakami writes revises 330 days per year, 4 or 5 hours. And let's say he does that 4 or 5 years. What does that equal? That equals 8,000 hours. But he doesn't always spend 5 years. So let's take that back to four, and it's around 6,000 hours. So let's just round that down to 6,000 plus the 500, and suddenly we have around 6,500 hours per novel. And for all the haters out there, there are people like Murakami writes the same novels 3 times. He writes the same 3 novels time and time again. Murakami isn't that good of a writer. Okay, great. And so here's a guy who spends 6,000 hours on his novel, and people love it. And so how much time are you going to have to spend if you think that you're going to be better? Are you just that much more talented? Do you think of yourself that highly? Oh, wait, that's probably why you are talking like that in the first place. And so this is a general estimate, and I keep telling you guys this about how much time it takes to actually write something that's magnificent, because let's call it even 5,000 hours. That 5,000 hours is then going to get sent to an editor that's going to get paid over $10,000 easily to revise that novel. And it's going to get sent to a cover artist that's probably going to get paid easily over $1,000 to make the cover. Then whoever does the typesetting and InDesign and that makes the font choices and all that probably is easily going to get paid over $1,000. Then what's the marketing budget look like? How much time and effort? How many valedictorians or top of the class kids are going to be in that marketing department at the publishing house pushing out that work to the world? That's the bare bones of what happens when you write a novel and get it published in a big way like Murakami, and it goes out to the world. So you could skip that whole last part if you want. But when people are confused about maybe why their self-published stuff isn't publishing very well, then like how much time and money have you put into it? And people feel so uncomfortable because they're like, well, I don't have $10,000 for an editor. Well, maybe you should save up some money, because if you release something that is really good and has a great cover, then the next 6 years while you're writing your next novel, you could just market the shit out of it. You could, because once again, you have to do that. Where people are missing this whole thing with, why isn't my book on Kindle ever sell? Why don't I? Because you're competing against a system. You're competing against people. And so you could spend 6 years, which would equal probably the same amount of collective time that this publishing house is going to put into the initial launch of the book to push it. And if it's actually good, then it will sell. I can guarantee you that if you spend $1,000 on your cover, you hire your editor, you have someone design it and pick the right font, and it's actually good, and you spend half your time writing your next novel and half your time marketing the old novel, by the time you launch your next novel, you will be ready to sell thousands of copies on the initial launch of that second book. And this is what I see. People complain all the time. And I, as someone who is on BookTube, who decided one day to make a change. I just used to make BookTube videos, everybody, about random stuff that I cared about and like didn't really care about the thumbnails or any of this stuff. I made 200 videos, just as good as this one, or if you think it's bad. Got 100 subscribers over the course of 4 years. Nothing. Then I decided one day, okay, I'm going to take it to the next level. I'm actually going to take this seriously and stop blaming everyone else. Stop blaming like, oh, they're too dumb to understand this. No one cares about poetry. No one cares about esoteric psychology or existentialist philosophy. Instead, I was like, okay, this is a me problem. And that's not it. I've not hit Eureka yet. I look at what I'm doing now. I'm like, oh my God, I could do so much better. But I'll tell you that filming random videos and just chatting it up and yapping and then just posting them online and just making a thumbnail in 20 seconds and just not really caring, that was so much easier. Same thing with the novel. It's so much easier to write a novel in an insular way, not spend the 5,000 hours editing it, tell everyone that you're a novelist, blame all the problems of your novel not selling on everyone else being stupid or too much saturation on Amazon, not do anything, then try again, then eventually give up. And I could see immediately when people, like I get sob stories all the time in my comments, like I've released 5 novels and no one cares, so this one's going to be my last one. And then they put a link and then I look at like their novels and what's happening. I was like, yeah, I'd rather be only allowed to read Sarah J. Maas novels, Rupi Kaur, and watch Gossip Girl for 5 years than read your 5 novels in a week. Like that's how interested I am. And I read experimental random stuff, indie published stuff all the time. And so I think you guys kind of get what I'm saying, that we have to be able to break out. We have to take ourselves seriously. That Murakami's saying here, with that amount of time that he's putting in, how much does he write per day? How much does he revise per day? 5 hours a day, usually for about 4 or 5 years per novel, sometimes longer. That may seem like a long time, but as you are doing that, you can work on other projects. You can write poetry. You can write short stories and use that to market yourself, because the number one message of this channel right now besides the literary renaissance, and this is a part of it, is that the saddest thing in the world that I've been watching lately is people who have good novels that I know. Some of them are on my Substack, and they launch their book and no one buys it in the first week. They put 3 or 4,000 hours in. I would say it's a pretty damn fine novel. No one buys it, nobody cares. A book launch is a big event. You know, people in retrospect do watch movies again, but when you see the box office, you know, when you look at like how past movies did, you see the budget, then you see the box office. And there's after sales that, you know, sell for rentals or on Netflix or all this other stuff. But a launch is this massive boost of interest. That's a once in a lifetime opportunity. Because if it goes well, think of even if it goes decent. Think if you got 500 people to buy your novel in the first month and 50 people reviewed it. You're in the top 1% of reviews suddenly on Amazon of books published. Probably the top 0.1% because there's 3 million books published per year. How much more willing would you be to buy a book that had 50 reviews than 0 reviews? Getting 500 people to buy your novel, it sounds crazy. If it's actually good, isn't that hard. You don't have to be a marketing wizard. You don't have to even get on camera. You could get that level just through writing and like Instagram posts alone with never showing your face easily. And so now we're getting lost in the business side, but I'm just letting you guys know that that's the reason why you should put 5,000 hours into each book so it can be good. And then during that same time, maybe when you're at work, when you're taking a break at work and you're on your phone, maybe you make an Instagram post. Maybe you are doing something all the time when you aren't writing. And that over the course of 5 years, that doesn't happen overnight. People like, I post on Instagram and nobody sees it. Me too. I've probably released 1,000, not 1,000. I've probably released 100 shorts, reels or things on TikToks, and nothing's ever gone over 5,000 views. But if I kept on that and if I kept up, it would happen. And it's very discouraging because I remember one time my wife, she made a video that like, it was like one of those carousel things where it's like, what Disney character would you be or something like that? I don't exactly remember. And that got like 90,000 views. And she just turned the phone toward her face and posted it. And so it can be discouraging, obviously. But if you keep it up over time, especially over the course of 5 years, you will kind of find your momentum on any platform. And then that should be able to translate to a good start and a good launch for your book that you worked hard on and hopefully is very good. And so thank you guys for being here. I will be dropping more knowledge soon. And let's keep pushing toward this literary renaissance.